All right, I've got 6 o'clock on my end. Generally, I'm not the person calling the meeting to order, but as right now we don't have a chair or a co-chair, I'm the Tyler Stamey, the staff liaison for the Transportation Advisory Board. I'm the Transportation Engineering Administrator. I will call the meeting to order here, August 9th, TAB at 6 o'clock. And can we get a roll call?
David McInerney, TAB.
Courtney Michelle.
Present.
Sandra Stewart.
Steve Lehner, present.
Liz Osborne. Joe Long.
Present.
David McInerney.
Present.
Steve Lehner.
Present.
Councilmember Peck.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. So generally this board is a 7-person board. As of right now, we're a board of 6. So we need at least 4 people every meeting to have a quorum in order to conduct business. So I appreciate everyone's attendance and interest in this board and the time that you give to your community. Quick introduction. I introduced myself a little bit from the perspective. Some of the regulars you'll see on this meeting, Phil Greenwald will be sharing with you a little bit later tonight. Phil's generally at the TAB meetings. We also have Tim Mngmt on here. He's the Director of Engineering Services. He's generally at these meetings as well. And then we have several other staff that will present tonight, and we'll give some introductions as we get to those other items as well. But if David or Steve or anyone else on the board would like to give a quick introduction or tell a little bit about yourself, not asking for too much, just pretty quick. And then once we get through that real quick, we'll nominate a chair and a vice chair. So we'll need a motion and a second for chair, motion second and a vote for chair, and then one for vice chair as well. And David, you're on mute. It looks like you're talking, but I can't hear you.
Yes, I'm David McInerney, and I'm happy to be with you tonight. I am retired from a career in land use and environmental planning, and I've been a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners for about 20 years. I've previously served for 3 years as a member of an advisory board for another community in Boulder County. So once again, happy to be with you.
Welcome.
Guess I'll go now. I'm Steve. I'm relatively new to Longmont. I've been here about 3 years now. I still work. I'm in government, actually no longer in government technology. I guess I'm in the private space. I work with companies on website development and that sort of a thing. I am a cyclist, but that's not, I drive a car. So I probably am multimodal in my use of transportation. And I'm fantastic, really happy to be here and support the community.
You're on mute, Courtney.
It keeps muting it by itself. I don't know why. I'm Courtney Michelle. This is my 3rd year on the board, I believe. I'm also vice president of Longmont Sister Cities Association. And yeah, happy to be here. Wish we were together, but oh well. And I have to jump off at 7:25.
I'm Sandy Stewart, and I'm also on the board for the 3rd year, beginning of the 3rd year. And I've lived in Longmont for over 30 years, raised my kids here, and I'm retired. I have an interest in transportation, the multimodal options, and making sure that things are equitable and fair for everyone and everyone's included. So I'm excited how Longmont continues to step up about meeting all those needs. So I'm glad to be here and welcome new board members.
Yes.
I guess I'll jump in. I kept trying, but it was muted as as we found out earlier. I'm Joe Long. I think this is my second year COVID. I feel like I've missed a year, but I believe it's my second year. I've been in Longmont for roughly 10 years now. 5 kids, entrepreneur, and just an all-around transportation interested fella. And welcome new board members.
All right, thank you all. And at this point, I kind of step back and leave it to you guys to make a decision on who to nominate and vice chair.
Oh, well, I don't know how Sandra, you and I are the longest board members currently. I don't know how you feel about running the show for the next year. I kind of have a lot on my plate with sister cities right now because we're onboarding a 3rd sister city in September. And I just want to say I don't feel like I could do it justice, but with that said, I'll go with the board, what y'all think. But
I'd be willing to do second in command, but I don't know if I want to lead since I'm a newbie.
Well, we're in trouble if I'm in charge.
all you have to do is run the meeting, Sandy. And I'd be happy to be second in charge too.
But I don't know procedures. I'm not good with that. If you all tell me what to do, I can do it.
Tyler, can you support Sandra if we nominate her and help her do all the things she has to do?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
then I would like to make a motion to nominate Sandra Stewart to be chair of the Transportation Advisory Board.
I second.
Well, thank you for your vote of confidence, everyone. Oh, my. Okay.
Any discussion and then a vote, Sandy?
Oh, yeah. Any discussion? Anybody else want to be in charge? No?
I'll help you, but I just can't take it on.
Okay. Thank you. All right. I guess we vote now. Is that what no discussion? Nobody else wants to step in this job? Okay. Then we vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand or yay or nay or whatever. All those opposed? Those not voting? Okay. Guess we're it, Steve.
So I apologize if I missed the motion. So is it a motion for Sandy for you for chair? I think we need to for
yeah.
vice chair.
See what I mean? We're in trouble. Yes. Do we need to do this again? Okay.
Yes,
Motion
we do.
is for Sandy Stewart to be chair of the Transportation Advisory Board with Steve Lehner. Did I say that right, Steve?
You did.
As vice chair. All those in favor, raise your hand.
Okay.
And all those opposed? Oh, nay. Okay. It's done. It's a done deal. Oh, dear.
All right. Sandy,
You'll be great, Sandy.
I'm in charge. Oh, no.
you're
Okay.
chair and get a take over from here.
Okay, we're gonna approve our minutes from our preceding meeting of May 2021.
I apologize for a typo there. It was June meeting, so I missed that on the agenda.
Oh, was it? Oh, I'm sorry. Well, okay, June. Okay, June 2021. Did everybody have a chance to read it?
Yes, there was just one apostrophe S that doesn't need to be in there. I don't have it up right now and can't tell you. There's one possessive that shouldn't be there. And then my name is spelled wrong once and then it's repeated twice later down. But it's just typos.
Okay.
But otherwise, they're good, in my opinion.
Any
Joe,
other
did you read them?
Yeah.
I was skimming rapidly.
I saw that your name was repeated, consecutively. So I knew.
Yeah, it's just a little typo thing or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so no discussions other than we're approving the minutes. I need someone to make a recommendation, correct? To approve the minutes and then to add what needs to be added. Courtney,
Okay, I would like to make a motion that we approve the minutes with a few name corrections and the possessive S removed on whatever page that is that I can tell you later, Tyler, if need be.
okay, and do I hear a second? So that would be you, Joe.
One moment.
Okay,
I second the motion to approve pending edits.
okay, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes based on what we have, but the amendments that were mentioned before. Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Is there any abstentions? I guess it's supposed to be abstentions and then opposed? Is there a order to that? I'm telling you, you guys are in trouble. Okay,
Sandy, it works as you've done it. That works fine.
okay, all right, so we've approved them.
McInerney abstains because I wasn't a member of the board then.
Okay. Thank you, David.
I guess Steve Lehner will abstain as well.
Okay, thank you.
And just real quick on that, so that we end up with without a quorum in that situation. So I think two
Okay.
things. One, you can approve with the caveat that you weren't there, and in order of continuing to conduct business, we can approve with the changes as recommended, or we can choose to not approve the minutes. We can review David and Steve, you can review last month's video and check the minutes with the video form. Two options. Either way works.
I'm comfortable with the first option. That's I think we're fine. Yeah.
Okay,
I am also.
thank you. So it's been moved and seconded, and now may we vote? All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, great. It's been moved and it's been approved. So we accept the minutes with the changes. Great. Thank you, guys, for stepping in there. All right. Communication from staff. Tyler.
The only thing I have at this point is just I'd gotten some feedback from the board in terms of virtual versus in-person. I think the majority of the feedback has been that I've received so far has been a preference for in-person, and we'll look to do that as soon as we can. It seems that it's somewhat of a dynamic situation again with COVID, so stay tuned. Our goal is to get back to in-person as quick as we can as well, but want to do it in a safe manner. And so stay tuned. We will work towards getting back to in-person. That's all I have for items from staff at this point.
Thank you. All right. Is there any public invited to be heard? Do we know? As I look down that list. Nobody?
I think everyone's either staff or
Okay.
press. So John Fryer is here from the Longmont Times Call, just for your information.
All right, thank you. Okay, action items then. We're going to move on to the 2022 proposed capital improvement program.
All right. Yeah, I'll kick this off real quick with a couple of introductions. So presenting to you the board tonight are two staff. We've got an engineering administrator, Tom Street, and a civil engineer, Ario Rituda, will be walking you through some of the highlights of the proposed capital improvement program.
Thank you.
Share the screen here real quick, so stay tuned.
Would you like us all to mute ourselves?
I don't know if I have a preference or not. Of course, during this presentation, if there's any questions or concerns, feel free to jump in.
All right, is that coming through for everyone?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see it, Tyler.
All right, and Tom and Ariel, as you're walking through this, just give me a cue, next slide when you're ready to go.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and kick it off. Chairperson Stewart and members of TAB, as Tyler mentioned, my name's Tom Street, and I'm with the Public Works and Natural Resources Department. I'm here tonight with Ariel Rituda, and we're here to present the city's proposed 2022 to 2026 Capital Improvement Program, or CIP, as it relates to our transportation projects. Okay, Tyler. And to give you a little bit of insight of what we're looking for tonight, at the end of tonight's presentation, we're going to be asking TAB for a recommendation on the proposed CIP. There are two options. The first option is a recommendation of the CIP as presented by staff. And option two is the proposed CIP as presented by staff, but with revisions as recommended by the TAB. Okay, Tyler. And typically each year we provide some general information on the city's CIP process. First and foremost, the CIP is a planning document that identifies the city's infrastructure needs over the next 5 years. The CIP identifies met and unmet needs, in that projects are grouped as funded, partially funded, and unfunded. Our CIP is a dynamic document. Each year there are changes in response to changing priorities and funding levels. And one item to note is City Council commits funding only for the first year of the 5-year CIP cycle. So when budgets are approved later this year, only the CIP expenditures in 2022 will be approved. Okay, Tyler. Staff will use many different master plans and studies to help determine the projects that are included in the CIP each year. At the highest level, we use Envision Longmont. It's the city's multimodal and comprehensive plan. This plan has dedicated section and guidance on improvements for roadways, transit, pedestrians, bikes, with an overall goal of having a complete, connected, and balanced transportation system. Staff also uses a variety of transportation studies to determine which projects are included in the CIP. For example, staff will use the 2014 roadway plan, and in this plan, it identifies the various arterial street and intersection needs throughout Longmont. Staff also continually works on asset management plans, such as our 5-year pavement management program that identifies rehab and pavement preservation needs throughout Longmont. Also, every 2 years, we receive from CDOT bridge inspection reports. And within these bridge inspection reports, and therefore all of the major structures in Longmont, it provides a detailed accounting of needs on our bridge, on all of our bridges. And of course, project selection is always constrained by available funding. Okay, Tyler. City has 2 funds dedicated to transportation. The street fund is the primary source, with the street fund sales and use tax accounting for about 75% of the revenues. And the chart on the slide that you're looking at, those are projected revenues for next year, 2022. And next year, we're expecting about $18.182 million coming in from the street fund sales and use tax. We're expecting about $2.85 million coming in from the state highway use tax, about $1.4 million coming in from the automobile tax, and about $600,000 coming into that fund from miscellaneous sources. And again, these are projected revenues for 2022. The Transportation Community Investment Fee Fund, we're expecting about $700,000 coming in to that particular fund for next year. So these are funds that provide the primary funding for transportation projects within Longmont. And one item not identified on the chart are grant revenues, and 2022 is a peak year for grants within Longmont. Next year, we're looking at $6 million coming in for the Kaufman Street Busway project. We expect $2 million coming in for our quiet zones effort. We're expecting $1.5 million coming in for the St. Vrain Greenway Trail extension on the east side of Longmont. The TCIF fund, it has restricted uses per our municipal code. It can only be used for arterial street and intersection improvements. And this fee is levied on new construction, and the fees are collected at the time when building permits are issued. Okay, Tyler. Since the street fund sales and use tax is such a critical funding source, we wanted to mention some of its history and background. This tax was originally set up in 1986 to maintain and improve the city's street system. It required renewal by Longmont voters every 5 years. And since 1986, it was extended 6 different times until 2019. In 2019, this tax was permanently extended. And this is by far the most critical revenue for transportation in Longmont. Okay, Tyler. Tonight, we're going to present many different types of projects, including projects that deal with asset management, projects that improve capacity in our intersections. We have safety projects, various multimodal projects. We have projects that will improve our bridges. But also wanted to mention that in addition to the different categories of CIP projects, the city has ongoing maintenance and operation needs funded out of the street fund, such as roadway striping, sign maintenance, snow and ice removal, street sweeping, pothole repair. And these are all services completed by our in-house maintenance crews. And they are funded out of the street fund also, but are outside of our capital budgets. Okay, Tyler. Tonight, we're going to present 11 projects that would require a 2022 appropriation of about $22.1 million. And all of these projects have a funded component in 2022. All right, Tyler. Our first project, TRP 001, as it's identified in the CIP, is our street rehabilitation program. Each year there are 5, 6, maybe 7 different projects within this asset management program. And asset management is a cornerstone responsibility for our staff. The city has about 355 centerline miles of streets that require various types of maintenance, preservation, rehabilitation treatments on a yearly basis. The city will contract with various civil and highway contractors to perform all of the work. And projects range from concrete repair to pavement rehabilitation to preservation projects such as chip sealing. The goals for this project include the optimization of city resources in a way that meets our community needs at the lowest long-term cost. We also want to make data-driven decisions. Staff uses a pavement management software system to help select projects. And most importantly, we want to build credibility as good stewards of public resources. All right, Tyler. Our next project is TRP 11, our Transportation System Management Project. This is a project that we commonly refer to as TSM. And this is a program that will design and construct a variety of improvements. And the different types of projects may include traffic signals, school safety improvements, safety at high accident locations, alternative mode projects, neighborhood traffic mitigation, ADA improvements. So there's a lot of different types of projects included under the umbrella of this CIP project. In 2022, some of the project work we anticipate includes work at Ken Pratt Boulevard and Sunset Street, which has 2 primary components. It has a road diet component on Sunset Street from Kansas Avenue to Nelson Road. And we're also looking at intersection improvements at the intersection of Ken Pratt and Sunset. As far as the intersection improvements, we're going to be looking at options to add dedicated right and left turn lanes for both northbound and southbound traffic, along with other related improvements. Another project that we're looking at to be included under the TSM umbrella for next year is our 3rd Avenue bike lane project. This project would add buffered bike lanes on 3rd Avenue from State Highway 119 to Martin Street. The intersection at 3rd Avenue and Alpine Street is on the city's high crash intersection list. So we'll be also looking at that intersection, trying to identify ways to improve safety at that high crash location. Another project that we expect to start next year, it'll be later in the year, but would be our County Line Road bike lane project. This project, and we're looking at starting the design effort next year. This project will design or include pavement widening of County Line Road from just north of 17th Avenue to State Highway 66. The widened pavement section would accommodate on-street bike lanes. And the photo that you see up on the slide at the lower right location, that was a photograph taken last week, and I think it clearly shows the need for improvements along this busy corridor. All right, Tyler. TRP 092, our Boston Avenue connection project. This project is currently in design, and this project will provide a new east-west minor arterial connection. Key component is the at-grade crossing of Boston Avenue with the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad tracks. Wanted to mention that Boston Avenue is the preferred BRT route through Longmont. And this project will provide a connection to the upcoming transit station at First and Main. In 2022, the focus will be on completion of the design effort along with right-of-way acquisition. And at this point, we expect construction to start early in 2023. Two of the more critical elements of this project is the coordination required with the PUC and the railroad. The PUC will need to grant approval on the at-grade crossing before this project can go to construction. So again, that's a real critical aspect. But if we get the PUC approval, we think we can go to construction early in 2023. Okay, Tyler?
Can you remind people what PUC stands for?
PUC is the Public Utilities Commission, and I guess in a more correct sense, it's the Colorado Public Utilities Commission.
Thank you, sir.
Tyler, this is really your bailiwick. If you want to jump in on this one.
Sure. Yeah, so this one's been working on this one for a while, and quite frankly, the Transportation Advisory Board had a lot to do with getting this project in the first place. We're in a good spot where we have dollars and funding to do this. Been working very actively on getting designs all approved through BNSF. They have a big say in this. It's their private business. It's their railroad we're modifying. So that's been the primary bulk of the work so far this year, is coming to terms on the agreements that we have to have for each crossing. And right now we're working through some easements. Our goal was initially to do some construction this year, but the way the easements are working out with BNSF, it's probably more likely to be construction and starting in 2022 at this point. But for those that don't know, we are working towards getting all of the mainline at-grade crossing to a point where the train will no longer have to sound the whistle as they come through town. So pretty good project for the community. We've got the dollars to do it, and it's just working through the agreement stage with BNSF and FRA. Federal Rail Administration is who's administering the grant funds. So working on sign-offs and approvals from all those different agencies.
All right, thanks, Tyler. You could move to the next slide. Our next project is TRP 105, our Missing Sidewalks project. This is a yearly CIP project. This is a project where we design and construct various gaps or missing segments in our sidewalk system. But also this yearly CIP can make improvements to our existing sidewalk systems. In 2022, our focus will be on the relatively large 17th Avenue project, which will be replacing an aging and failing asphalt sidewalk with a wider concrete sidewalk. The project limits are the north side of 17th Avenue from Cook Court to just east of Francis Street. And currently we have the design effort going, and the right-of-way acquisition process is currently moving forward. And at this point, really the most critical remaining aspect of this project is the acquisition of needed right-of-way and easement. There are over 15 different parcels where we either need right-of-way or a type of easement from. And assuming that we're tracking and moving forward in a reasonable fashion, we expect to start construction on this project mid next year, mid 2022. Okay, Tyler. TRP 118, or Boston Avenue Bridge project. This is a project where the design is about 90 to 95% complete. We expect to go construction very early next year, very early in 2022. This is a project that will be the local match for the next RSVP project, which is a Army Corps of Engineers managed and funded river channel project from Boston Avenue to Sunset Street. Primary benefits of this project include flood protection. If you take a look at the graphic, the blue line represents the perimeter of the new channel for the new bridge structure. You can see the new bridge is much longer and deeper than the old structure, which will provide much improved flood conveyance. And another benefit of this project are sidewalk, on-street bike lanes, and underpass improvements. The new underpass, pedestrian underpass, will be designed and constructed in a way where it will flood much less frequently than the current structure does. The photo on the lower right shows the existing structure, and we currently see flooding late spring, early summer at this location on a rather frequent basis. All right, Tyler. And at this point, we're going to turn it over to Ariel, and she's going to cover the next handful of projects.
Thanks, Tom. Hopefully you can hear me okay, and I unmuted the perils of remote meeting. So our next project here is TRP 132, Enhanced Multi-Use Corridor, or often shortened to EMUC improvements. So just some background on the EMUC plan. It was finalized in 2018, and the plan proposed designs for each of the selected EMUCs at a planning level, so a little bit of a higher level. Design considerations for each of these areas included buffered bike lanes to provide a safer and more comfortable cycling experience, detached sidewalks to just create some distance between pedestrian pathways and traffic, and then finally modifying roadway lanes to help mitigate traffic wherever possible. So areas that were identified that were found to improve connectivity to key destinations like schools, trails, and parks, things of that nature, were prioritized and stacked against each other within this plan. So two of those areas that rose to the top were 21st Avenue and Mountain View Avenue. And those two are also slated to be addressed in this next budgeting period. So the status is that design for 21st Avenue, and this would be the stretch from Francis Street to Main Street, is slated to start in 2022. And the design for Mountain View Avenue, also the stretch between Francis and Main, is slated to start in 2023 with a construction start goal of 2024. Next slide, please.
A quick note on that. I think Francis Street in Longmont is with an I and not an E. It's misspelled on your slide. On the previous slide.
Okay, we can, sure, yeah, we can make those changes before
Thank
we
you.
can send the slides out. Of course, thank you for pointing that out. So TRP 135, the Kaufman Street Busway, this is a project that we're going to be hearing more about in subsequent presentations. However, the location is along Kaufman Street, and it spans from First Avenue on the South Cap to 9th Avenue on the North Cap. And as Tom noted before, the city received a $6.75 million funding from federal and state for both design and construction. And this project aims to provide a bus rapid transit corridor to help alleviate congestion along Main Street. And it also provides us just a slew of other multimodal options like separated and buffered bike lanes, as well as safer pedestrian access routes and crossings over Kaufman Street. In addition, the project also ties into the future transit center, which will be located at First Avenue and Main Street. So design is underway for this project, and an alternatives analysis is currently being conducted. A snippet from that analysis is actually pictured here to the left. So 3 concepts are being explored. And the city is engaging the public extensively and is also evaluating internally the sustainability between each of these alternatives. So construction is anticipated to begin in 2023. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a question on the BRT project?
Yes, please.
Have you polled or talked to any other communities like Albuquerque and their BRT program? I know that was much bigger. To find out what was the best design choice for the congestion and the level of activity they thought they'd have on that corridor?
That's a great question. I might call on Alden if he's on the line to help me answer that. He's the PM on this project. Or Phil. Hi, Phil.
I was going to say we work with all the different. We've been talking to. Well, we haven't been talking to directly, but we've been working through the idea of which kind of alternative is best for this corridor. And so we've got some nationally renowned design professionals who we've called on as far as our consulting firm on this. So they've done a lot of work around the country in Seattle, in the Northwest, particularly in Minnesota. Not necessarily Albuquerque, but they do know about that project. So we've been in close contact, obviously, with our consulting firm on this. And so they have a lot of experience, and they've taken what they've learned from all these different projects and kind of combined them into something that's very uniquely Longmont. We'll chat a little bit more about that in the follow-up presentation that's specific to this project.
Great.
But we can talk more about it too. Yeah. Does that answer the question, or are you?
Yeah, I mean, I think subsequent presentations are going to help kind of flesh that out. So that's fine. Yep. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you for your question, Steve. We can go ahead and move on to the next slide, Tyler, if you will. So TRP 137, the Main Street Corridor Plan. So this plan, I believe it was 2016 that it was conducted. It provided a preliminary engineering and high-level planning for a 5-mile stretch along the Main Street corridor. It spanned from Highway 66 on the north limit down to Plateau Road to the south, and that corridor here is shown on the right. The plan's main objective was to both highlight and prioritize transportation needs in the areas of safety, mobility, connectivity, and access. So North Main and Midtown, which are highlighted here to the right, are slated for an access evaluation to help inform design efforts. I'm getting a note here from Phil that it was actually in 2020 this plan was conducted. Thank you, Phil. Let's see, where was I? So another status point here, the design of a pedestrian underpass is underway, is not underway, but at 21st Avenue is on the docket for 2022. In addition to that, a coordinated wayfinding signage effort is in the works, and traffic signal modifications throughout the corridor are also in the pipeline as well for this next budgeting period. Next slide, Tyler, please. So DRN 28 Spring Gulch number 3, it's pictured below in the colored picture to the right. So this is the last leg of a just under 3-mile Greenway trail system, which will complete a north-south connection from Ute Creek Golf Course to Union Reservoir and then down to the Sandstone Ranch nature area, which it will then connect with the St. Vrain Greenway trail system down there. So much like phase 3, much like phase 2, phase 3 of this project will include extensive drainage improvements and a pedestrian underpass under the Great Western Railroad. So much like TRP 92 that Tom covered earlier, we will need to be, it's critical, the coordination between PUC and the railroad, and the construction schedule is pretty much contingent on PUC approval. But that said, this phase is currently under design and we're hoping for construction to begin in 2022. Next slide, please. So St. Vrain Greenway phase 13 is pretty much picking up where Spring Gulch number 3 terminates at the Sandstone Ranch Recreation Facilities area. Phase 13 will extend from Sandstone Ranch to St. Vrain State Park across Highway 119. This project features 3.5 miles, depending on actually the alignment that we choose, but 3.5 miles of landscaped, accessible, and multimodal concrete trail. You can see there on the left the preliminary trail alignments that are being considered right now. And this project also includes the construction of a pedestrian underpass at Highway 19. So this project spans across a few different jurisdictions. Other entities involved in this effort include Weld County, the Colorado Department of Transportation, a property owner, and the Colorado Parks and Wildlife. This project in the city did receive federal funding in the amount of $1.5 million, and we are currently in the bidding process for design services. Next slide. So that concludes the project overviews, and I will open up the floor to any questions and turn it over to Tyler to help with the approval process. Thank you, everybody.
Tyler, I have a question.
Go for it, Sandy.
My question is, I know that everything's been budgeted, and it may sound naive, but I'm wondering if any of the funded projects ever come under budget when they're completed.
Tom, would you want to chime in on that one a little bit?
You bet. It doesn't happen all the time, Chairperson Stewart, but it certainly does happen from time to time. We have broad projects that maybe it's a very competitive economic climate. We get great bids from our contractors. We have a quality design without many change orders. So we certainly do have projects that come in under budget. And typically when those projects come in under budget, at some point in the budgeting process, that funding goes back into the fund balance for that particular fund, which in most cases is a street improvement fund.
So it's able to go forward to use on another project.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. Great. Thank you.
I had a question about, are we going to discuss some of the unfunded projects or not really?
The intent wasn't necessarily to talk about the unfunded projects, but we have a variety of staff here tonight. So if you do have questions, I would feel free to throw it out, and we'll make our best attempt to answer it.
Okay, there was just one project, it looked like, was it from 1988 that still says it's unfunded? Did I see that correctly?
You remember which project?
I'm trying to find it now. Let me see. I'll scroll through real quick and look at that. If anybody else has any other questions, go ahead.
And sometimes when you see a project like that, it's more of a program type project. It's a project that we have usually projects on a yearly basis. So maybe it was first put into the CIP 25, 30 years ago. But, and there may be a year or two where it's unfunded and it looks like it's not being funded, but through the years, most likely there were funded years where improvements were constructed.
It's project TRP 001. It's actually the pavement management project. It's in the partially funded status from 1988. And I was just wondering if that is actually in another, why it's in partially funded, or it just continues on.
You know, that's a project that since 1988, I can attest that we've had yearly improvements constructed. It's a project that truly is a cornerstone responsibility for our staff. Asset management of our existing improvements is certainly a higher priority for us. And when you look at it being partially funded for 2022, it doesn't mean that we're not spending money, we're not having projects. We just have a certain unmet need that if we were really trying to accomplish all of the work where we would really like to be, it would require some additional funding. But the funding being proposed in 2022 for TRP 001 is still rather healthy. It's just not quite as high as we would like it.
I see. Thank you for the explanation.
So I have a question. Oh, David, is it David?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, David. Go ahead.
I want to thank staff for the presentation. My questions are really about the project sheets that were included in our packet for this meeting. Are those project sheets going to City Council? Or were they just prepared for our information?
Those project sheets are part of the draft CIP for 2022 to 2026. And the sheets that were provided to the CIP were only a portion of the entire project. So, and due to pretty limitations on my behalf, it cut off the sheets, not necessarily at the same location for every project. So you may see some projects where it looks like it was cut off, and really what we tried to do was only include the first page of that particular CIP as it's being illustrated in our capital improvement program. But to answer your question, yes, it is going to City Council.
Okay, I do have some comments about those project sheets. The first one is just an editorial comment, and it's project TRP 119. That's the 3rd Avenue westbound bridge rehabilitation. The text of the sheet says that the project aligns with guiding principles 1, 2, and 4, but the corresponding boxes are not checked.
Okay, good comment. We'll certainly check into that. Okay,
the next comment that I have is about project number TRP 124, Nelson Road and Hover Street intersection improvements. And I disagree with the claim that that project aligns with GP1. I don't believe that 6-lane intersections promote livable corridors. I would urge you to uncheck that box. And similarly, I disagree with the claim that the project aligns with GP2. I believe that expanding to 6-lane intersections is a sign of a transportation system that's out of balance if Envision Longmont is your guiding plan. So that project aligns with the objective of accommodating increasing volumes of vehicular traffic. And I think the CIP should just be upfront about that.
Again, great comments. It's comments that at the staff level, we'll certainly sit down and discuss.
I would make the same comment about TRP 122, but that one's not funded, so I'm not so concerned about that at the moment. And finally, regarding the project sheets, there was a summary at the end of our packet that included municipal building boiler and carpet replacement projects. Are those being funded by the street fund?
A portion of those improvements are being funded by the street fund. Basically, the facility where those improvements are being proposed house either public works, maintenance, engineering staff. So that particular service has a responsibility to pay for a certain percentage of improvements at that facility. So there may be 5 or 6 different services funded out of that facility. And there may be 5 or 6 different budgets paying for that improvement. But yes, the street fund does have a small responsibility depending on the location.
I see. And was that explained in the street fund ballot information, or is that just something that's evolved over the years?
Honestly, whether it was referenced in the ballot issue or not, honestly, I'm not going to commit to that. I'm just not certain about that.
Okay, those are my comments.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
All right, so with that, we are asking for a recommendation from the board to City Council. Two options as we had shown earlier, and I can share the screen again to show those options as we put them here. One would be recommend to council as presented, or option 2 would be recommend to council with changes, with revisions by the board.
So what Tyler's asking us is to make that recommendation. Either we approve what's been presented to us, or we choose to amend it. Correct, Tyler?
Yes. Loading up the options here on the share screen again.
Okay. So yes, okay. The first option is recommend to City Council to adopt the funding from the Street Fund and Transportation Community Investment Fee Fund for transportation projects as presented by staff that in the 2022 through 2026 proposal capital improvement program. And the second option is recommending to the City Council adopt the funding from the Street Fund and Transportation Community Investment Fee Fund for transportation projects as presented by staff in the 2022-2026 proposed capital improvement program with revisions recommended from the Transportation Advisory Board. What would you like to do? Do I hear a recommendation?
Well, I'd like to make a comment because David brought up some really good points.
Okay.
And I guess I would, ask David, do you think that there's enough in your opinion that you would want to have revisions to this plan that was presented tonight?
Well, I'm not suggesting that any projects be added or removed. I was just recommending that for project TRP 119, 3 boxes should be checked, and that for TRP 124, 2 boxes should be unchecked.
Right, but the question about the 6-lane intersection was fairly relevant. So I don't know if that's something that needs to be discussed further, if we're fine with moving this forward as they've presented it.
Well, if it pleases the board, I'd be happy to work on drafting maybe some language regarding the Wilson Road and Hover Street intersection improvements that might serve as to remind council of what they adopted in Envision Longmont as it regards livable corridors and balanced transportation systems.
Courtney, you're muted.
Thank you. I'm wondering if that might affect the actual funding, because that's what we're being asked to recommend, either fund as is or fund with recommendations. So it might be possible that that would be changing the actual funding, but that's the question we're supposed to answer, correct?
Yeah,
Right.
I think
My thought refers to the way the draft CIP refers to Envision Longmont and the way it claims that these projects are aligned with the guiding principles.
I understand.
I just wanted to be more honest about that.
That's a fair
I think
point.
the foundational concept here is that our recommendations don't prevent, block, or otherwise slow funding. Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong about that, but it's really, is there amendments or proposals or attachments we want to make to the options or the proposal? Tyler, is that correct?
That's correct.
So I would like to make a motion that we opt for approval on option number 2. So that gives David the opportunity to document some of those recommendations.
I would second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Joe Long and seconded by Steve Lander. Did I say Steve's last name right? Do I raise your hand if you agree? You vote on option 2. Opposed? Abstention? Okay, so it's been approved to go with option 2, and David is are you gonna address some language, David, or we're gonna go with what David has suggested in the Envision Longmont part?
Well, I would feel more comfortable with seeing the wording he would like to add as a recommendation, and I would assume, Tyler, that we need a deadline on that, or do we need to wait till our next meeting to do that? Because this gets presented to council in October, correct?
I believe that's correct. So just to be clear, the recommendation is option 2, and the changes, David, that you were interested in were checking those boxes, and there was more you wanted to provide with that, or just changing the boxes that are checked on those sheets?
Changing the boxes would address my comments and concerns.
Okay.
And if anybody needs a reminder, it's checking the boxes for guiding principles 1, 2, and 4 on PRP 119, and removing the text from the boxes for GP1 and GP2 on project TRP 124.
Okay.
And for Nelson Road and Hover Street, that would leave the safety guiding principle intact as a reason for doing that project. There would still be some connection to Envision Longmont if it was presented that way, because there seems to be evidence that some of the rear end vehicle provisions would be eliminated by improving capacity of the intersection.
Phil,
I would just suggest to the board that they may want to just pass that option 2 if you haven't already. I think you are maybe short on that so far, and there's been no vote, but I would suggest you just add that into your language as the motion, and then staff can look into whether those changes are needed or not, just to be sure. And I think David's correct that they appear that they might be needed, and there might be typos at that point. So we just want to be very clear from you as a board that you're providing us the direction. We don't want to come back if there's other language that has to be added. We're going to have to come back to the board for that specific language, and that's going to be a month away. So we couldn't do that. We're trying to, I guess, clean this up with this motion tonight, rather than having to come back to you with additional language. I think that's what I heard from David. Is that correct? That you were?
That is correct.
Okay. I would just suggest that you make that motion all in one fell swoop tonight, and then we can kind of make those corrections as we need, and not have to come back to you next month with a similar request.
so you're asking Joe to restate his motion? Okay. Joe, would you restate your motion?
I believe I can accomplish that. Let me give it a stab here.
Thank you.
So I would like to forward a motion that we opt for option 2, as noted with the concerns by David, which I believe we have captured in detail. Is that adequate?
Okay. And it's second by Steve?
I'll second that.
Okay. And is there any more discussion on that? Or can I do that?
Please.
I can have more discussion? Okay. All right. No more discussion? All right. All those that approve the motion of Joe's, raise your right hand. And those who don't, okay, abstain. I think we all voted. I think we all voted for. Okay.
We did.
All right. It's been passed, then we go with motion. Motion 2 with the amendments that you stated, David. Thank you. Okay. Are we done there, Tyler?
We are. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tom, Ariel.
Yeah, Chairperson Stewart and members of TAB, we certainly thank you for your time and interest.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, are we ready for Phil's presentation on Kaufman Street busway? Okay, Phil, thanks.
I think Alden's going to try to bring up the presentation here, and I really appreciate your time, and thanks for kind of walking back through that last motion. Chair Stewart, it's great to have you as the chair. It's wonderful that you got that position, and welcome to the 2 new board members. We're very excited to meet and greet you. We wish we could have done it in person, and we usually have a little bit more robust onboarding, but unfortunately in these times, this is kind of the way we're doing things. So we do hope to get together in person, but as you know, that's kind of been an issue lately. So, and we need to think about that. But my name is Phil Greenwald. I'm the Transportation Planning Manager. So I'm in a slightly separate work group than the engineers on the call tonight. I'm also working with Alden Jenkins, who is one of the engineers. He does a lot on this project as far as design and the actual construction of the project, hopefully in the future here. And so my role is really just to kind of do the long range planning piece and bring this to your attention. And we were able to find some funding for this project as well. So some exciting things are moving forward. And I really wish I had put together more slides for you all as far as just some background, because I think some of the board members know the history and maybe some do not. So I apologize for that up front, but this is really a busway project that is incorporating the bus rapid transit corridor that's going to run from on State Highway 119 between Boulder and Longmont. It goes all the way through our town. They say it's 119 is the state highway, but it really encompasses US 287, which is our main street. So Ken Pratt Boulevard and Main Street are really the two pieces to this. And we are also working on a US 287 BRT project at the same time. And you'll hear me mention that. And that was actually a subject of our last June meeting in June that was referenced in the minutes. So you'll see that we are working on a number of projects that apply to and involve this project. So next slide, please. So the Kaufman Street Busway, again, is part of these different bus rapid transit projects. So these bus rapid transit projects came forward to us, and it was, how are you going to incorporate these more regional bus rapid transit projects into your city and into the downtown area of Longmont? So we started really looking at how can we get buses on a fairly congested corridor, which is 287, which is about 20 to 25,000 vehicles per day, typically. And we're starting to see those numbers come back again. So I can't say pre-COVID. I think I can say now we're having those same numbers. But it's really about how do we facilitate a bus and a bikeway and parking and keep some of the landscaping, the sidewalks, and the trees in this corridor as well. So we looked at Main Street corridor. We found that it was just the congestion was a lot. There was some, the parallel parking was an issue. So we started looking at Kaufman Street as a really good alternative to Main Street as far as handling the bus traffic and some of the bike traffic that wants to be going north-south on this corridor. And then we found a really good connection on the south to the St. Vrain Greenway project as well. So next slide, please. So with this project, we've established some guiding principles. I won't go over them all in full detail here, but just to understand that it's really the multimodal street aspects of Kaufman, the block by block streetscape design, so that we have some idea of how do we integrate the trees that are existing. We have a wonderful canopy in there. It's a historic canopy of trees. We don't have much in the way of actual ground landscaping in many areas. Some areas we do, but we need to enhance that as well. We want to really preserve that character, that community character that comes with Kaufman, and we've heard that loud and clear, and you'll hear more from Alden on that about how our outreach went with that. We just want to fulfill that funding requirements from the grant. So each grant has funding requirements, and ours is that it has to be a busway in some aspects. It has to have the bike facility as some aspects. We want to enhance that pedestrian walkability along the corridor and between this corridor and Main Street, so we have that connection. And then that really does provide that larger transportation system that we're looking for Longmont to really be more fully connected as we move into the future, and gives us many more options as far as how we travel in the future. So next slide, please. So I'll turn it over to Alden. He'll go over the alternatives that we've been looking at recently. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Phil. Good evening, members of TIB, Council Liaison Peck. I'm Alden Jenkins, a senior civil engineer working alongside Phil on the Kaufman Street Busway project. We do have three alternatives that we wanted to share with you this evening. And before we get into the differences and the specifics of these alternatives, I wanted to just share with you what they all have in common, so that you can keep that in mind as we look through the differences between them, because these cross sections you see in front of you are actually going to be fairly similar from one to the next. There are some specific changes between the two, or the different alternatives. But that said, each alternative is going to have a protected bike lane in each direction for this project along the entire length of the corridor from 1st Avenue to 9th Avenue. And the cross section you see on your screen, that's on the edge of the roadway in the green protected bike lane area. What that means is that there's going to be some sort of vertical barrier between the bike lane itself and either the parking lane or a travel lane. This vertical barrier could be in the form of a curb and gutter, a raised curb, patterned concrete area, landscape buffer, something of that nature. From there, each alternative is also going to have provide improvements to pedestrians along the corridor. One component of that is going to be repair of any damaged or some standard sidewalks or curb ramps along the corridor. But each alternative is also going to be installing mid-block crossings at some locations as well for pedestrians or bikes at that point. Beyond that, there's also going to be intersection improvements for pedestrians. This could be in the form of shortening the crossing distance at the crosswalks that cross on Kaufman Street themselves. We're also going to be looking at potentially shortening the crossing distance at the intersecting streets that do cross Kaufman Street as well. In addition to that, there will be landscape buffers and landscaping improvements along the corridor where we have the option to do so. And then subsequently, all alternatives will have to convert the existing the existing diagonal parking that's there now into parallel parking, which you can see in the PowerPoint there, parallel parking in some areas along the side of the roadway. Among all alternatives, there will be a net reduction in on-street parking along the corridor, but that does not take into account current, ongoing, and future planned projects in the corridor that will actually add public parking spaces that we don't have the exact numbers yet, but may either have a net zero or possibly net increase in parking availability along the corridor. So it's still in analysis right now. So lastly, all alternatives are going to have transit lanes up and down the corridor, and it's the location of these transit lanes where it varies within the width of the cross section, within the width of the roadway, that is the distinction between the different alternatives that we have to review tonight. Where those transit lanes go has an impact on how well the shared features that I described previously, so your bike lanes, pedestrian improvements, landscaping buffers, parking impacts, those will all be impacted depending on where those center running transit lanes, or sorry, where those transit lanes go, whether they're in the center or elsewhere within the width of the roadway. So that said, first alternative we have here is up on the screen, which will place transit lanes in the center of the roadway. There will be general purpose travel lanes running on either side of the bus lanes, with parking in some areas, parallel parking in some areas along the length of the corridor. The most significant impact, or this design alternative actually has the most significant impact to the existing corridor. So the existing landscaping that's there now, tree canopy, and on-street parallel parking, or on-street parking that we have there. Perhaps the most significant impact, though, that the center running transit would have would be that left turns into and off of Kaufman Street would be prohibited into driveways, out of driveways, and also at some intersections, cross-street intersections. So 4th Avenue or 5th Avenue or 6th Avenue, depending on the ultimate design, some of those left turns would have to be eliminated. So you'd have a similar scenario that you do on Main Street currently when you're on Main Street, where you cannot make a left turn off of Main Street onto the cross streets. So in terms of benefits, this center running option is generally going to be the most transit friendly in the form of the most reliable and quickest transit times among the three alternatives. It's also going to be reducing conflict points between vehicles, single occupancy vehicles, bikes, and pedestrians by not having those left turns. That will reduce those potential conflict points up and down the corridor.
Alden, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Passenger loading then would be in between the second travel lane and the bus lane, or will the buses have that egress that goes to the sidewalk for passenger loading?
No, you're exactly right. So with the center running option, there would be an island sort of floating transit station area between the bus lane itself and the travel lane at the locations that we have stationed. So in order to access that transit, you would have to cross the travel lane and then have some sort of protected area with a raised platform that would be the actual transit station.
And I'm assuming then that you'll make sure that that's all ADA compliant, because I know I've seen other BRT projects where they didn't account for the fact that folks that might be disabled have a challenge getting on and off those ramps and or the timing on the lights and the pedestrian calls.
Absolutely. Yeah, we would definitely take that into consideration.
I would just add one quick note is that we have an attachment in your packet from tonight with the communication to TAB. That attachment actually shows all the alternatives compared side by side. So you can actually see where those transit stops in purple are located. I would point you to the second page of that to kind of show the first level of transit stops that are incorporated, and shows the differences, I guess, between the three different alternatives, which is kind of nice. Thanks.
Yep. All right, so, and we'll definitely have time for more questions at the end too. Moving on here, I want to move to our next alternative design, which is a side running alternative. And essentially what this does is it just swaps the locations of the transit lanes and the general purpose travel lanes. So the buses now run on the sides of the roadway. General purpose traffic would now be where the buses used to be on the previous example. So this alternative has largely similar impacts to the corridor as the center running option in terms of reductions to tree canopy, parking, and so on. There may be some slight reduction in those impacts compared to the center running, but they're definitely going to be fairly similar between the two. The biggest difference between the side running option here in front of you and the center running option is that left turns would be permissible at driveways and intersections. So you'd be able to make a left turn into a driveway, out of a driveway. There would be no left turn not prohibiting left turns at any of the intersections either. So in terms of single occupancy vehicle mobility, it definitely is going to be more friendly than the center running option. What this does, though, is it does result in more conflict point potential with vehicles that would be passing the outside bus lane to enter and exit those driveways. Third option here is very similar to the side running option we're just looking at. We're calling this the side running hybrid option. In our TAB communication we provided, it's actually referred to as side running light. It is the same concept, hybrid versus light. The one key difference here between this option, side running hybrid, and the previous one is that in this option, buses would be traveling in the same lane as general purpose traffic in some areas. And illustrating that by the car that's highlighted, circled behind the bus there would be some locations or some segments of Kaufman would still have side running dedicated bus lanes on both sides of the street like the previous alternative design, while other segments would have just one dedicated bus lane, as you can see in this specific cross section. There would also be some areas where there would be no dedicated bus lanes for this option. And what this does with this option in particular is it offers more flexibility in parts of the corridor to preserve or even enhance features that are existing there, or to enhance features that we're planning and installing. So maybe more robust bike lane configuration, possibly a larger buffer, more landscape or tree canopy area. It does provide more flexibility in those areas where we would have that shared travel bus lane configuration. In terms of transit time modeling, we have looked into that, and what we found actually is that there's not a real significant difference between this option and then the other two alternatives in terms of transit time from one end of the corridor to the other. And the way that this is at least being accomplished initially when we were looking at this is there would be some design elements at the intersections that would just help keep the buses running. That would be in the form of queue jumps at those intersections to be able to help those buses get in front of the general purpose traffic, so they're not going to get stuck behind a car that would be in that lane, possibly making a left turn or trying to parallel park. Similar to the previous side running option, this also allows left turns at all driveways and intersections.
Alden, I would just mention too that the difference in travel time is seconds, not minutes, it's seconds. So it is, less than, in many cases, 5% difference.
Yep.
And so that's kind of the magnitude that we're looking at as far as the difference.
You have a question, David?
Yes, Alden, do your studies tell you then that conflicts between parallel parking vehicles and buses are not going to be a significant delay to transit times?
We don't expect so. And the reason why I say that is because we're actually looking at options where we have the ability to be putting in the parallel parking next to a shared travel bus lane. That'll afford us more space for those parallel parking stalls. And we're actually going to be looking at possibly installing a door buffer so that if there's a car that's been parked there and they open their door, it's not going to be opening it into a travel lane. And the other thing that we're going to be looking at is actually, does it make sense to lengthen the parallel parking stalls in some areas so that more vehicles can actually head in park rather than having to pull up to the vehicle next to in front of them where they're going to be parking, stop, and then back in. So I think it certainly may warrant some more analysis to look at, but with these combined options of the door buffer possibly longer stalls, plus the fact that this shared travel bus lane is not happening along the entire corridor, it's only going to be happening in portions of it. That's why I don't think it's going to be a real significant hindrance to transit times.
I see. And on a similar matter, are the buffers that are shown between protected bike lanes and parking in all of the alternative cross sections, are they going to be wide enough to prevent cyclists being doored by passengers leaving vehicles?
Yeah, we're looking at 3 feet is the minimum buffer width that we're going to be designing for. There may be some instances where there's going to be some real challenges with some parts of the corridor where maybe that has to get reduced down to less than 3 feet. But by and large, yeah, we're going to be shooting for that 3 foot mark for that buffer. Okay, so these 3 alternatives have been examined against a set of evaluation criteria to determine which one would likely be the best fit for the corridor. These criteria include an analysis for safety in terms of pedestrian, single occupancy vehicle, bike, and transit safety. We've looked at modal considerations, as in which alternative excels at supporting different modes of transportation, because I think some of them do it slightly better than others. And we've also looked at consideration for the general circulation of local and regional traffic through the corridor. Local traffic being those that are maybe trying to make those left turns into driveways or at intersections. We've also looked at how these alternatives preserve or enhance the community character. Generally speaking, the center running bus lanes result in the most impact to the corridor, whereas the regular side running offers a little bit less, and the side running hybrid provides the least impact among the 3 alternatives. And then finally, with cost and maintenance, we're still in the high level design phase of this project, so we don't have a lot of real detailed cost estimates, but what we're looking at now is that the center running is likely going to be costing the most out of the 3 alternatives, side running slightly less than that, and then the hybrid version being the least. And finally, with respect to maintenance, we do feel that the regular side running is going to offer the easiest ability for our operations team to be able to maintain it, followed by the hybrid version, and then the center running. And the reason why that changes is because of the actual restrictions of the roadway width will just make it more challenging for them to be able to work within in the area if there's a break in a water main or rehabilitation of the asphalt. The less lane space we have, the more of an impact, the more challenging it's going to be able to perform that maintenance. So we have to date have a pretty extensive, robust public outreach effort for this project, which has helped inform not only how we analyzed these projects against the evaluation criteria. To date, we've had a public survey that we issued for anyone to participate in about what's important, not only for the Kaufman Street corridor, but for this project in particular. That survey was well received. We had around 200 individual responses for that. We also issued a questionnaire directly to property owners and tenants to further drill down into what are their specific needs for the buildings that they have, their businesses, and just really see what they would need specifically for their case. Following the survey and questionnaire, we also had 4 separate 2-hour in-person meetings. And really the point there was to continue the project discussion in person, put a face to the name to the project. This was geared towards the property owners and tenants that received a specific invitation to be able to attend these meetings. We had fairly decent turnout on that. I think we had around 80 attendees in total for those meetings between the 4 of them. So far, the 2 most common points of concern that we've heard from all of this is that safety is a primary concern, and that's safety for vehicles, pedestrians, and bikes. As well, we've heard about is equal to that, I would say, is to maintain as much of the existing character of the corridor as we can. What that really looks like is maintain as many trees and on-street parking as we can with this project as well. By and large, from what we've heard, the preferred alternative design from public input and stakeholders such as RTD, CDOT, so on, is the hybrid version. So even with gathering a significant amount of feedback that we have so far, we're going to continue moving forwards in that effort. Once a single preferred design alternative has been decided upon, we're going to be taking that meeting to a public meeting, right now scheduled for September 27th, shown on the screen there. The intent of this meeting is to show this design and then to continue to gather more feedback to help fine-tune it as we move forwards. Did want to point out that we do have this currently scheduled as an in-person meeting. We're definitely, as been mentioned earlier tonight, we're definitely keeping in mind that COVID may force us to transition to either a all virtual meeting, possibly a combination in-person virtual meeting. So that's really to be determined on how that's exactly going to shake out right now. So the meeting time and date may end up changing depending on what direction we go. So with that, I want to go ahead and pass it back to Phil to go ahead and wrap things up.
Yeah, I did just want to point out that Sandy was in that last photo. So thanks, Sandy, for being our model in that meetings photo, even though you were actually in a meeting. So thank you very much, Alden. I appreciate all the work you've done as far as putting out, outlining the different alternatives. So thanks. I think that brings us to kind of our final slide, or final 2 slides here, where we're talking about the side running hybrid as being the staff, the external partners that Alden mentioned earlier, and many of the different, almost overwhelmingly, the folks that live and work in the corridor, as far as the side running hybrid being their option. And that, again, is the transit lanes that run alongside. We actually mix traffic in with some of those in some locations. We try to, I guess, unmix, or, you know, have them have their own piece of, or own piece of the transit corridor when they get to their stops, so that when they stop, the traffic can get around them. So that you'll see in that attachment that was included with the packet. The right and left turn lanes across transit lanes, that was critical with folks who lived in the corridor, especially some of our older adults who live in some of these higher density locations along the corridor. It was critical to them that they be able to have a more freedom of movement when it came to accessing their properties. And again, changing some of that was very critical to them. And the vehicles through lanes that we talked about, this being shared with buses in some locations. So this isn't for the whole corridor, but it's certainly some of the locations. So next slide, please. So our request for you, the staff action, or the staff request tonight, is that we have a motion from you to recommend the mixed traffic or the side running hybrid option for further design in the Kaufman Street Busway project process to City Council. And this will allow us to bring this alternative forward in that public open house as well. So the idea is we've gone to the Downtown Development Authority. They have already stated that they are endorsing the hybrid, the side running hybrid. We'd like to ask you to do the same tonight. Then we'll take it to City Council on September 14th and make the same request of them and make sure they're good with that. And then we'll be able to go to this public open house on September 27th on that Monday to be able to present this as the option that we're moving forward, the preferred option or alternative. So thank you for your time tonight, and we'll turn it over for questions.
Are there any questions of Phil and Eldon?
Do you want to go back to that last slide, Alden, just so they can have a reference?
I have a question on the public input, and I know it's probably maybe unanswerable, but in regards to 200 individual opinions or questionnaires that were out, plus folks who live there on block by block, do we know how many people in the community that this project impacts? So in other words, are we talking 200 out of 10,000? Are we talking 200 out of, 1,000?
You are correct, Board Member Lehner, that that's a tough one to answer. I would make the argument that it impacts the whole city and probably beyond, as it's a regional project. But we really did want to focus on how the city looks at this. So we did want to get the survey out to everybody in the city. And then we really wanted to focus in on those folks that were directly impacted by the project. So that's kind of what we've been doing with this, but I can't technically answer that question without kind of getting into the holistic approach to this.
No, I commend the efforts to do it, and I think doing the open house is a fantastic way of getting folks aware of the project. I was just curious if there was any numbers that were put together in regards to that. So,
David, you had a question?
Comment. I also commend the city's community engagement efforts. That's great. It looks to me like the hybrid alternative will do a lot to make downtown more livable and more walkable and more bikeable, but I don't think it should be called bus rapid transit. And I'm concerned that it's not going to move a lot of commuters out of their cars and onto transit. So I think there have to be some other measures taken to really focus on that kind of modal shift.
That's a great point. Yeah, we recognize that this is not what's considered bus rapid transit through this portion of the corridor. And quite frankly, what we were trying to do is just try to get this so it's moving a little bit quicker than it would on Main Street. And then on the north end, and then more on the trunk line between Boulder and Longmont is where you'll see the actual bus rapid transit components that really make this, a system that really can be kind of a national example, really, or almost a worldwide example, hopefully. But what you will see bus rapid transit in this portion of the corridor is going to be, dual door boardings of the vehicle at the different stations. So we'll have that along this whole portion of the corridor on Kaufman. We'll also have being able to get your fare paid prior to getting on the bus, so that it's rapid on and off. So many people can get on quickly without everybody having to go past the driver or pay into a fare box necessarily and slow down that operation. We're also planning to have much more robust and comfortable, quite frankly, loading facilities and transit platforms and those kind of amenities at the actual stop. So there's a lot of things that are BRT related, but I would agree with you that it's not going to be the rapid transit piece along the corridor, but we really are trying to highlight that in the downtown, there's going to be lots of on and off and lots of activity that is associated with this bus service. And so we're trying to capture that with a couple of stops in the downtown, and then let it run much more freely on either end.
So, I have a quick question. I get that this is the beginning of this vision for rapid transit connection to Boulder, and you talked about the double-sided door buses on the corridor itself. But is the future planning being that it would be a different bus or vehicle that would take commuters from the downtown area onto the next section of a rapid transit system?
Correct. What we're talking about, we're hoping to get an example vehicle at our open house. So we're looking forward to that. An articulated bus from downtown Denver that RTD currently runs parallel to the 16th Street Mall, called the Metro Ride, downtown Metro Ride. So we're hoping to get one of those buses to kind of highlight that these vehicles will be a little bit longer, and they'll have those double doors for boarding and unloading. So quicker on-off operations for folks. And so we're trying to show off, I guess, some of the equipment that RTD currently has, but that doesn't mean that will necessarily be in the corridor. But we are looking, that'll be the next step, is looking for vehicle types that run in this corridor. This isn't part of this project necessarily. This is more the RTD portion of trying to find the vehicle types, which a lot of folks have actually asked for electric vehicles as well, electric buses. So that's exciting too for the corridor.
Well, a case study that you may, again, I don't know who you're working with consultant-wise, but Kansas City, of course, had a very successful, granted it's a trolley, but it's a modern version that they did downtown, and they build that as, stay within downtown, move up and down. So they were marketing, if you will, to ridership that wasn't commuter-based, but more or less the folks that would be working and shopping in the Main Street district. So again, I know that's maybe a different area of your concern, but I think the way that it is positioned, and I like the fact that you're talking about electric buses, double-sided doors and all that, anything that's going to increase ridership is always going to be a plus, I would say.
Are there any other questions for Alden and Phil? Okay. We have before us, we're being asked to make a recommendation to the board, City Council. And the recommendation is like what our last one was, is that we can recommend the mixed-use traffic side running hybrid option for further design in the Kaufman Street Busway project process to City Council, or you can make amendments, make changes. So could I have a motion from our group, from the board?
I move that we recommend the mixed traffic side running hybrid option for further design in the Kaufman Street Busway project process to the City Council.
Seconded.
And okay, so it's been moved by Steve and seconded by David. Any more discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand. I guess I'm only seeing 3 people, so is Joe here?
Aye.
Okay.
Joe's and I.
All right, okay. And is Courtney gone? Okay. So it's been moved and seconded, and we voted yes to recommend this project to the City Council as is. Okay.
Thank you very much for your time. We very much appreciate your help on this.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Okay, Tyler, it says we have information items.
Chair Stewart, no information items for the agenda tonight.
Okay, so we're moving to comments by board members. All right, Joe, do you have any comments from the board for our staff?
No, I think it was well put together this week. Thank you. Apologize for missing the last session. Well done this evening.
Thank you. Steve?
Thanks for welcoming me, and I appreciate the staff's work on what was presented tonight. Thank you.
David?
Yes, useful presentations. No further comments.
Councilman Peck? We're not hearing you. No, you're good?
Stacy, are you able to unmute Councilmember Peck manually? Or Jane?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Councilman Peck, can you speak? No.
I sent a request to you to unmute. I'm unable to do so.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate all the work from staff. You've done a tremendous job as always. You've answered our questions and allowed us to question you. And I just really, really appreciate the work that you do consistently for the city of Longmont and for all the people that are here. So if there aren't any other items, oh, okay. I see that information on upcoming transportation-related meetings. Tyler, is there anything else?
No additional on that tonight.
Okay.
Councilmember Peck has a hand up.
Yes, thank you. I finally was able to unmute.
Okay, great. Councilman
So-
Peck, what would you like to tell us?
First of all, I want to congratulate you on running your first meeting. It was well done, Chair
Thank you.
Stewart. And welcome to Steve and David.
Thank
We're
you.
glad to have you on board. And I'm going to tell you really fast what I'm working on is that there is a possibility, a strong possibility that we can move the freight trains from Longmont out to the east. BNSF, Randy Grauberger from Front Range Passenger Rail and Union Pacific are working on that. So I just had a conversation with Randy this afternoon. So stay tuned. Hopefully we won't have to put any money into quiet zones. But
Wow,
we'll see. So thanks. I'll keep you updated.
thank you. That's great news. Okay, do we have items for upcoming agendas for September 13th?
Chair Stewart, one potential item coming up in the next agenda or two is some discussion on the State Highway 119 Bikeway Greenway. City staff working with Boulder County on that project. There may be information on that. And then Phil, you may have some, that's all we have penciled in the agenda right now. We will have, but
I do know that there is going to be a meeting on August the 30th on this 119 bikeway. And I was at a meeting today and something's supposed to be out next week, a press release inviting people to the meeting.
let me find more information and send it to the board on that.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Okay, if there's no other business, I guess we're adjourned.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Not me. Someone else has the motion. Sorry.
Oh, I thought that was Steve. Sorry. New voices, new faces. Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Okay, Joe, thank you for giving the motion and Steve for seconding. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you. See you next month. Have a great
Thanks,
month.
everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.